welcome. I'm Psychic Medium Roberto, and I truly hope you're doing well. All right, in today's case of suicide or murder, I'll be looking at the case of Misrach, who was an immigrant into the United States and was studying at Princeton. And unfortunately, she was discovered near the tennis courts and presumed to have committed suicide. The autopsy then also came out recently, a few days ago, to say that the cause or manner is by suicide and overdose of chemicals in her system. All right, so when this case broke, it piqued my interest, so I'm going to now take a moment to focus and tune in. All right, so as mentioned, Misrach, and apologies if I'm pronouncing it incorrectly, attended Princeton University, I believe, and she was found at the tennis courts 6 days after she went missing. And obviously there is a bit of controversy around this, and that is why I'm going to be doing the case. And yeah, so her body was found on October the 20th. However, the last time anyone saw her was on October the 14th. Now, it's very interesting if you look at the October 16 blurb there, phone pinged. Now, that is actually very, very important here, apart from the other information I'm going to share with you. But that October 16 with that ping on her phone, very, very interesting. And because of that, the curiosity levels go even higher, and I will bring that to your attention shortly. And so let's just have a look at who was Misrach Ewunetie, and she was an immigrant from Africa living in the States. And I can tell you now, born on February the 7th, 2002. As an overall comment, I've put there bursting with energy. This person, and I could just feel it now again, but when I was doing the meditation and preparing these slides yesterday, this was a very, very, very energetic person. She might not have always been outwardly energetic or outwardly expressive, but inside her, her core, her being, her soul, was this burst of energy that just wanted to share it with the world. And being a 4 life path, she could manage that. And she would be shy. I would say she would also be shy. 4s can tend to be a little bit reserved. However, within their close-knit circle of friends and family, she would be a bouncing bunny, burst of energy, very energetic, alive, very positive person, I would say this is. Being born in February, she does have a capacity to allow her emotions to rule her. And also born in 2002, there's a lot of 2s there as well. Although the outcome is a 4, she does have quite a high emotional influence in her life. However, what I would say is because of the 4s, and she has a number of 4s in her lineup, she would be able to manage that. She would be able to distinguish between what is reality and fantasy with those 4s. She was very grounded, very much a earth, metal, wood, fire person, earth elements, which makes her very grounded. I would say with that 7, so let's just take it on a higher level. The 7 is all about, she would have good intuition. She would have had the elements of justice in her, justice or injustice. She would have been fighting for the rights of others, whether it was just within her friend group or family or in the greater community. She would be that kind of person. While I was doing her numbers, and we'll get to the numbers shortly with regards to the 6 missing days, she does have a little bit of a Dennis the Menace, not a lot, because it's sitting as the day, and not as like the month or year or the outcome. So that's 7, a little bit of a Dennis the Menace. She would like to, it's all relative what we would consider naughty, right? So if she studied, for example, 7 days a week, and I think this would apply to her. If she was meant to study 7 days a week, she'd be the type of person to say, you know what, I'm going to study for 6 days and I'm having 1 day fun at least. Okay. She wasn't like, I wouldn't say she wasn't into any recreational drugs or any naughty stuff like that, or bunking school or anything like that. It's just a little character trait, which actually you'll find in a lot of people with sevens. What is referred to as like Dennis the Menace, like a little bit of a, I'm going to snub you a little bit because I want to go have fun and relax and not always study, study, study. I wouldn't say it was a very negative trait in her, but it is nice to break away and just refresh and fill up the glass, refresh the brain, sorbet for the brain. So now what's interesting here with all her fours, she has a very, very strong education, study, authorship traits, which means she was quite a dedicated student, I would believe. Now, I haven't done too much research into what she was studying and so forth, but I would say she definitely has the numbers and the aptitude for study. And I would go as far as to say with the 9 and the 4, she would definitely have the propensity for higher learning, and even beyond like an undergrad degree, let's say. She could have easily have gone on to do like a honors or a master's and even a doctorate. She does have that capacity in the 9-4. So I've put there, you can see with the 4 is very astute student, but with that 9 and the influence of the 9, she definitely has the capacity, intellectual genius that would be required to be a higher learner and take it beyond a postgraduate degree. Now, she reminds me of a case that I did with David Kelly. He had similar numbers, David Kelly. Very highly intelligent, genius nature. We all know that he was a highly regarded scientist working for the British government. I thought I'd just pop that in there. She has similar numbers to David Kelly, or at least the propensity or the capability for higher learning. Very intelligent person, this, I would say. Now, what I would also like to say is, let's look at her name and surname. And we have the outcome there, 35-8, and the 39-3, with the outcome 11-2. Now, that 11-2, and I guess combined with that 7 in her name, this woman was about justice, injustice, doing the right thing, and not necessarily doing the wrong thing. And I believe with her death, premature death, in my opinion, this case has not concluded yet. And with that 11-2 outcome, I believe there will be justice in some shape or form in the future. Okay? There will be justice for Misrach, and excuse my pronunciation. There will definitely be a moment of justice for her in the future. Okay, so for example, before we continue, if you look at the breakdown of her date of birth with the outcome 4, compared to, on the right hand side below, when she was discovered, October the 20th, 2022. There are very few numbers. If you look at the 274 versus the 126, yes, there is the 2, but in the main, there is no real connection there, which tells me something. In fact, it starts alerting me that something is wrong. Okay? And I will show you in a minute. And I just want to highlight, and this is a bit of a setup for later, because the toxicology report did indicate several high-level chemicals in her body. In fact, let's talk about that now. 4s do tend to suffer with depression. I will give you that. I will admit that, let's say. 4s do tend to suffer with depression. However, in her case, I believe she did not have the type of 4s that would tell me that she was a depressive per se, or suffered from acute depression, having studied psychology in my past. I would say, because she has the outcome 13-4, she would be able to manage that depression, or, and I'm not even going to say depression, she would be able to manage her thoughts or feelings. And I know I did say she does have a high level of emotional impact, but there's a difference between feeling emotional, or I feel a bit blue today, or I feel a little bit down, I'm going to watch Netflix the whole day, I'm not going to bother about studying, that kind of thing. That's fine. We all need that. We all need a duvet day or a Netflix day or anything like that. I would say her depression would have been manageable. And the reason why I'm saying that, it's a 13-4 outcome. If it was a direct 4, then I would say, yeah, there's a propensity for deep depression. But in this case, I don't think so. With the other numbers that aligned with her, as well as her name, and as mentioned at the top, she was a burst. She was like this energy ball walking around. And I would say she would almost feel like she has all this energy inside her, that it's about joy, celebration, just being alive, being human, being alive, being able to study, and in this case, being able to even live in the States. A lot of people around the world, including Africa, would love to go and study. I've had friends study in the States when we were all at varsity. I had friends, a friend of mine went to go study at the States. A lot of people love to study at the States. A good example, or a celebrity example, would be Elon Musk. Went to go study in the States, having left South Africa. So, in my opinion, based on what I'm seeing here, and my intuition, as it were, is this person had everything going for her, right? She was going through the process of being a legal citizen. She was studying at a top university. She had a good group of friends, as far as I understand. Her brother Universe was around. This person was in a good space. Okay? In my opinion, this person was in a good space. In fact, in such a good space that she was actually thriving, in my opinion. Okay? She was thriving. So, I never pick a case, but it gets pinged on me and draws my attention. Having worked in the TV industry, I did a lot of documentaries, a lot of factual content. I did thousands, or let's not say thousands, over 1,000 talk shows that had to be factually correct. When this case pinged on me, something was not adding up. All right? Something was not adding up. So once I started reviewing and looking at this information, and I can confirm, in my opinion, something is not adding up with this situation. And we'll go deeper now. Okay? Now, before I get started, I want, when I concluded my research from a numerology point of view, psychic point of view, something kept on pinging, and I'm going to raise it here in the beginning of this episode. I kept on getting told or reminded about the Elizabeth Short show that I did. Okay? Now, what's interesting here is there are some similarities, significant similarities between the Elizabeth Short case as well as now with Misrach. Okay? And the similarities are both female. Now we can blow that off and say, well, coincidence. Both were missing for 6 days before they were discovered. Both were left in the open to be discovered. In my opinion, and I'll show it coming up, both were murdered. I mean, we know Elizabeth was definitely murdered, but in the case of Misrach murdered, my opinion, by the establishment. Okay, that is my opinion as well. So, and I'll prove it in the numbers and psychically as well. So in my case, it was just striking that there are these similarities where misogyny has once again, unfortunately, come to the fore, in my opinion, where young women, Elizabeth was very young as well, were murdered for various reasons, including they were females, by men or males. Okay? Femicide, which is a big thing currently in South Africa at the moment, big issue. All right, people, get ready. Here we go. All right. Now, when you look at the slide, let's not get overwhelmed by all the numbers and the dates and everything that I've got here. I would just say to you, let's focus on the blue block. Don't worry about everything else. I will look at that or tell you why I've added it to this chart. But let's focus on the blue block. Okay? All right, so let's focus on the blue block. We've already covered her name, her outcome of her name, as well as the date of birth, which I've left at the top and on the right, just so we've got reference. Now, the first thing I'm going to bring up to you was when I started meditating on this case, when I got pinged on it, I received an image, older, blonde male, standing in front of others who may have been students in some form or capacity at the original crime scene. Now, both bodies, as mentioned with Misrach and with Elizabeth, that was a staging. They were both staged. In my opinion, Misrach would have died somewhere else and brought to that location. All right, so let's have a look here. October 13th, which was a Thursday. I've included the days here so we get perspective on what actually happened here and the time or the day that this happened, right? So on Thursday, October 13th, I believe she went to go help out at some facility on campus with some function. That's fine. Now, and then was last seen the early hours of October 14. Now, I concur. I would say 100%. Okay? That information, 100%. Okay? So let's look what happened. I believe she was lured in by someone. So I believe during the October 13th, and it could have been before, but I believe there would have been some kind of confirmation on the Thursday that she would have been invited to something or come out, let's go do this or do something. Whatever that inaccurate information would have been. In other words, I believe she was lured into the situation. So they could have said to her, whoever the person was, and we'll get to that, hey, why don't you come out? We're all going here, or why don't you come out? Let's study together. Whatever it was, she was led away on false pretenses, in my opinion. Just like Elizabeth Short, I believe, received an invite to an event, and that event was a staging event with the outcome of her being murdered. Okay? And I believe we have a very similar situation here. That's why it's quite interesting that Misrach and Elizabeth Short have a very similar situation here. So let's have a look. On that day, that red one on October the 13th, I believe, it is featured throughout the entire sequence of days from Thursday to the Thursday. That one is very significant. And I believe it is about that person luring her away and ever present during these days, obviously, right? Because they would have planned this, they would have decided who to take or who to choose for whatever reason, and we'll get into that. But I believe that one standing out throughout every day is the person or group remember a group can also come out as one, lured her into this situation. And if we look at the numbers, that 13-4 pings directly on Misrach. That 13-4 pings directly on her. And in my opinion, if we had to create like a visual, like a graphic or an animation, I would definitely say that 13-4 is Misrach, right? And that 6, which is going to be ever present, is going to play a significant part, and unfortunately a negative influence. 6 being very outrageous, anger, violence, murder. Right, so the outcome of the Thursday into the Friday is a 5 and a 6. That 5 and 6, which is very interesting here, that 5 and 6 on the Thursday reveals itself again on the Friday. So it tells me ongoing, continuation into the next day in a lesser or major capacity or impact on Misrach. Okay. Now on that Thursday, I would suspect that because Misrach has the 11-2 outcome in her name, she would have been a little bit doubtful about the situation. Are these people being genuine? Is it a genuine invite? Or does she have to do something else? She would have been a little bit in two minds, I would say, from a personal point of view. On the other hand, if we look at the perspective of the perpetrator or perpetrators, and I believe it's the latter, perpetrators, that is about breaking the law. Or let's go back one step. That would be about, let's talk to her, lure her in, see if she accepts or not. So there was also a little bit of uncertainty, I would say, from their part, saying she would not, there's a 50-50 chance that she wouldn't accept the invite. But they would have lured her in with the 5s. Now you see the 2 5s there. That 5 talks about a higher learning establishment. It talks about a university type establishment, a higher education. That could have been used against her, or used, not against her, but used, this will, if you come and join us, that will give you some street credits or whatever the situation is. Okay? So as we know, as in reality, the outcome was she was last seen that Friday morning. Okay, so she had obviously decided to go to wherever this situation was, wherever it was. Okay, under false pretenses, by someone technically she could not trust, but she thought she could trust. And that invite with the 5 was bullshit. And we see that 5 in the Thursday, the 5 was bullshit. But it was used to lure her in. And I believe she would have been drugged on that Friday. And let me say why I say drugged. That's 6. And we'll see it in fact, in Kaylee's case, the girl that supposedly ran away from home and never been found. That's 6. That night that she had the drug-induced psychosis was a 6, was poison. And I believe we have a build-up of an issue around chemicals and poison. Now we know in the autopsy, she would have, or the autopsy revealed X amount of chemicals in her body, and I'm not going to go into the chemistry of it, but we all know that the autopsy said antidepressant type chemicals in her system. Now that's very interesting, because if you recall at the beginning of the video, this was a person with a 4 life path. Okay, 4 life paths are more prone to choose, let's say if there was a counter with 2 bottles of medicine, right? A 4 life path will rather take the medicine that is more natural based, not home remedies, but homeopathic remedy, more natural than only chemical, like these antidepressants. It's chemicals, and I'm not even going to go into that industry of death with the psychiatrists prescribing tons of chemicals. I'm not going to get into that today. So I believe she would have been drugged on that Friday. And when you have that 6 and 6, that bothers me completely. My whole chest area I start feeling like I want to go into a convulsion. High anxiety, high OCD, not a good drug at all, whatever it was, whatever that poison was. And I will, once I've got completed with my train of thought currently, I will go back with the perspective of, yes, maybe she did commit suicide. Maybe she did commit suicide, but there's one fact which we'll get to that happened on the October 16th, which still creates an issue. Let's say, okay, let's deal with it now. Let's say she did commit suicide. By the end of Saturday, she would have been dead, right? Okay, that's completely plausible. However, there are other things that happened post that Saturday that tell me something does not add up. Okay? My belief is on Friday, whoever this person was or the group of people, in my opinion, had secured her into that environment and was captured, held against her will, almost kidnapped, for example. And that we see in the 12-3. Very controlling, very abusive, highly abusive. And we have that infamous 3 again playing its part when you're dealing with murder and people, and particularly when you're dealing with female. 3 is also about feminine energy. It's about females, feminine energy. So I believe she would have been held captive for some time, at least for a period of 48 hours at the most, I would say. Okay? But I strongly believe by Saturday, by the end of Saturday, let's say, by the time the sun sets on Saturday, Misrach was dead, was deceased. There was an injustice done on the Saturday, or by Saturday an injustice had occurred because of poisoning. And now that poisoning, let's just say that poisoning could be any kind of chemical that would cause a human to die. Okay? Now I find it very convenient that in the autopsy report that there were 3 or 4 different high level chemicals or toxins in her body. I find that very convenient. Why? Because it would mask what was actually going on physiologically in her body. Okay? Now, I believe the group or people intended for Misrach to be discovered on the Monday. That's why I've highlighted the numbers in bold black, because I believe there was a message or a lesson that they wanted to send out to the rest of the student community, and in particular the immigrant community, as well as the black community, that you can be taken out violently, aggressively with a 6 at any time. Now, if you look at the day that she was discovered, the Thursday, October 20th, we've got the 9 and the 6 there. It's reversed on that Monday. So I actually believe, in my opinion, she was meant to be discovered on the Monday. but was only discovered on the Thursday. The outcomes are completely different. That 6 is a warning on the Monday, and the Thursday was, I believe, there was intervention involved here, and that occurs regularly, and I'll explain that as well, just to not create confusion. So by intervention, I mean the zeros in the date of birth. You see all the zeros, 2002, October is a 10, there's a 1, 0. That, in my opinion, that allows or tells me there could be intervention spiritually, not from physical intervention. Physical or human can try to be very clever and create the perfect crime, as we've seen in what's his name, Brian Koberger. You think you've got all that down as a human, but let me tell you something, evil is blind. The universe can see, and intervention takes place. I believe they intended her to be discovered on the Monday morning, but she was only discovered on the Thursday. Okay? And the reason why they set this up was a warning, in my opinion, to immigrant students, racially profiled students, or any students deemed not worthy of being at that establishment, in my opinion. Okay? So, based on this information, and I'm going to say it anyway, that October 16, and we can go back to that previous slide because we have seen it. If you look at that previous slide, which is this one here, the Princeton, New Jersey, and we have these dates, October 16, her phone pinged. Her phone pinged on October 16. Now, in my opinion, she would have definitely, by the time the sun set on Saturday, Misrach would have been deceased. And let's say she did try to commit suicide. This was the point that I raised when I got to the beginning of the slide. Let's say, for example, she died. She committed suicide. Let's take that angle. That's the current what's the word I'm looking for? That's the narrative at the moment, right? She was discovered at the tennis course deceased. So that tells me, okay, let's say on Saturday she died. So 48 hours later of trying to commit suicide, 48 hours later she died. Okay? She died at the tennis courts. So then how does her phone ping on October 16 away from the university grounds? You know, when you're dealing with these, how can I put it, organized crimes by groups of people living in their own world or living under the guise of a establishment of rituals and traditions, that they are not, or they believe they're above the law, right? So they're almost acting and devising plans within a little bubble. But unfortunately, or actually fortunately, there is the real world beyond walls and fences and boundaries of a close-knit, established, ritualistic, violent group of people. Okay? So in my opinion, based on my senses as well as the numbers, Misrach was murdered, drugged, filled with all sorts of chemicals and poisons. It's almost like, and I know I'm being a bit facetious here, but it's almost like, and this is exactly what it is, it's almost like someone that is vegan is found to have died by overeating 10 McDonald's burgers. Like 10 regular McDonald's burgers. Vegan found murdered with 10 burgers in the stomach. Okay? It's like not going to happen. Yeah, we have a bit of a naturalist. In fact, very much a naturalist. Fours. Found with all sorts of poisons and toxins in her. Now, I'm not discounting the fact, and I haven't gone into medical records or done deep research into a medical history. It's not my business to do that. But let's say she was taking an antidepressant every day. Okay? So it would be 1. And I believe it wouldn't have been a high dosage antidepressant because she was in control of who she was, and her, even though she was highly emotional, it wasn't to the point of that it would cloud her. But with that 9 and with that 7 and with the 4, ironically, she would be able to manage her depression, and it would be managed on a micro or a lot less dosage than the autopsy revealed that she had scoffed down 3 different types of chemicals. Not going to happen. So in summary, I believe she was lured away by false premise. So this tells me it was already premeditated. It was planned in some way or form. Lured into a situation where she was trapped and she was under control of someone else. And she would have realized by that Friday, when the sun rose on Friday, she would have realized she was in trouble. And by the Saturday, I believe, is when the murder occurred. Or it could have even been late Friday evening into the Saturday morning. She would have been deceased, but guaranteed by the end of Saturday, she was deceased. And I believe the chemicals used to kill her were also masked under or part of the chemicals that were found in her system. In my opinion, Misrach did not commit suicide, but was murdered. See, at the start of the Thursday, the 13-4, that's her. And at the end of the Saturday, that's the 13-4. So very interesting that her phone was pinged 24 hours later, or let's say for argument's sake, the next day, and far or at least fair distance away or away from university property, somewhere else, pinged on the Sunday. Alright, thank you for watching. If you have any comments, please feel free to add your comments. I would love to hear your thoughts. Please feel free to hit the notification icon for future uploads, and stay safe and stay alert.